Alright, today is 14.1 Day 2 notes. So we're still in statistics. We're just going to look at some different types of stat plots. So this first one is called a dot plot. In a dot plot, it easily compares the frequency of data visually. So when we look at this, looking at the daily low temperatures of City A and City B, we can see that the temperatures of City A are more spread out, whereas with City B, they are not as spread out and they peak at the same temperature of 36, but more often. So we could take this data and write it out in a list. We could say that for City A, we could say their temperatures are 31, 31. I got that from these two dots here. Then we have one dot on 32, a dot at 33, two dots at 34, and so on. We could also do that for City B. So that's really what a dot plot is. We just see the dot tells us how many times it reached that temperature. The next one is called a stem and leaf plot. A stem and leaf plot. So this one is a little tricky to read sometimes. What we have to be super careful of is the key. The key says that at 6'3", that means 63 years old. So all of these numbers over here are the tens digit of our age, and then all of these are the different ones digits of the age. So 01 tells us a 1-year-old. So if we were to write out these ages, then we would have 1-year-old, 02 is a 2-year-old, 02 again is a 2-year-old. Do you see what I'm doing? 03 is a 3-year-old, 04, and we actually have 4 4s, a 5 and an 8. Then the next line. Now we're getting into the teens, so this would be 10. And again, 1, you stick on the leaf, 10. 1, next leaf, 10. 1, 1, 11, and so on. So that's how we read a stem and leaf. Look at the key to see if it's a decimal or an integer, and we just tack on one leaf at a time to give us each of the numbers. Stem and leaf plots are really helpful because they show us how the data is spread out. We can see the lowest age is 1. We can see the highest age is 66. We can see that the age 4 is pretty common, that 32 and 31 are common. So you can see the common numbers. You can see if there are outliers. So let's say at the bottom of this there was 8 and 4. We would see that most of our ages are below 66, but then all of a sudden there's 84. That could potentially be an outlier. And then again, just make sure you look carefully at the key. So that's dot plot, that's stem and leaf plot. Then next one we have is a box and whisker plot. And this one is also just called a box plot. So either name means box and whisker. We'll be looking mostly at box and whisker today because this gives us a 5-number summary. So it tells us what the minimum number is. It tells us what the quartile 1 is, which you learned about in yesterday's video. It tells us the median value, which is also called quartile 2. It tells us quartile 3, and it tells us the maximum. One other thing it does is it divides it, we'll write this down, divides into 4 quarters. And I'll explain what all of this means. So here's our box and whisker plot. This shows us 6th grade math tests from one specific class at one specific school. What this tells us is, over on this side, it tells us the minimum. And we're going to say that minimum value is approximately 67. Then quartile 1 is this first line here. And quartile 1 is going to be about 77 or 78. This middle line is quartile 2, or our median. So in this case, our median is, not approximately, it is exactly 85. It tells us our quartile 3 here. And our quartile 3 is approximately 93, we could say. And then our maximum is over here at the end, and we could say that's approximately 98. I'm saying approximately because we can't tell exactly where it is, so we're just guessing. So this is helpful because it breaks the data up into these quartiles and into 4 quarters. What that means is in each of these 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, there's 25% of the data. So that means that 25% of the students on this math test got a grade between a 67 and a 78. That 25% got a grade between 78 and 85. That 25% got an 85 to a 93. And that 25% got between a 93 and a 98. So it breaks it up into the 4 quarters. And then, of course, this Q3 to Q1 is our interquartile range, the IQR, which you also learned about yesterday. So 50% of our students got within a 78 to a 93. That IQR, remember to find that, just as a review, you take Q3 and subtract Q1. So that would be 93 minus 78 if we wanted to find the IQR. And last of all, we have a histogram. So this is called a histogram. A histogram is another helpful visual look for us to see how spread out is our data and where is it the most frequent. So obviously this one's talking about grade distribution. These are the grades and that's the number of students. So it looks like the most students received between a 50 and a 59 on whatever that assessment was. So our histogram is helpful for that. One thing we can do is actually make a table out of it. So we would say these are our grades. Here's our number of students. And then we would just put our ranges. Our grade range for this first one is 0 to 9. And we will have to approximate. So if this is how high up it goes, we could say maybe that's about 9 students. This one is obviously 10. This one goes to here, which we could say is about 22. This one maybe 29. This one maybe 35, 55, 39. That one is exactly 20. That one's exactly 10. And this one could be maybe 3. So again, on this we had to estimate a little bit, but we could then say that between grades 10 and 19, the number of students are 10. Then we have 20 to 29, number of students are 22, and so on and so forth. So that is what a histogram looks like. So let's look at some examples. Oh, real quick, before the examples, on the next page, here is the box and whisker plot breakdown, just in case you want to see it again. One thing this is missing is the fact that there's 25% of the data in each of these sections, okay? So you can go back and look at that if you need to. All right, we're given the heights in inches of 14 basketball players. We want to make a dot plot and a stem and leaf plot. So for our dot plot, we're just going to take each of these and put a dot on the number line. So we see 68, 70, 70, 71, 75, 80, 81, 82, 84, 75 two more times, 1, 2, 80 again, 75 again, and 77. So we can see that our heights are really spread out, but that 75 is the most frequent or the most common height. Then a stem and leaf plot. So for our stem and leaf plot, we need the stem and we need the leaf, and we actually get to create our key. So for our stems and our leaves, we see we have one height in the 60s, we have some in the 70s, and some in the 80s. So we could say, for an example of our key, we could say that 6, 8 equals 68 inches. Our stem is going to be the tenths place, our leaves are going to be the ones. So that would mean for our stem, we have 6, and we have 8 for our leaf. That's the only one in the 60s. One thing about a stem and leaf plot is that your leaves need to be in ascending order. So that means they need to be from least to greatest. So I'm going to go ahead and underline all of the stems, that would be 7. And then let's go and put them in order. We have 70, and we have 2 of those. So I'm going to put 0, 0. Now we have 71. So stem is 7, leaf is 1. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 75. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I'm sorry, that's too many. There should just be 4 of them. And lastly, 77. You'll notice that on the front of the page, we actually had commas between them, but you don't have to do that because we know that each of these is a separate leaf that goes with the stem. Lastly, our stem of 8. We have 80, 81, 82, 84, and 80. So I see 2 80s, so that's going to be 2 zeros. Then an 81, an 82, and an 84. So there is our stem and leaf plot. If you printed the notes, we're actually going to skip that next histogram for now. If we have time, we'll come back and head to the back page. So on this, we're actually going to make a double box and whisker plot here. We want one for the Middletown boards and one for the Snowboard Central. So you kind of learned about how to make, or at least how to find the Q1 and Q3 and the median yesterday, and we're going to need that here because we need first our minimum. Well, make sure your data is in order. Yes, it is in the correct order. So I'm going to go ahead and label down here. This is going to be our box and whisker plot that represents Middletown snowboards. Our minimum value is 345. That's our minimum. So I go ahead and put a little line, and I'm actually going to label all the lines. That's our minimum. Then I recognize my maximum is 405. So I go ahead and put a little line there. That's my max. And those are going to be kind of those outside lines. Well, now we need our median and we need our Q1 and our Q3. So to find the median, we find the middle value. But on this one, we actually don't have an exact middle. That means we're going to take the average of the two closest to the middle. So we need to take the average. That means add them and divide by 2. So when I add 356 plus 360 and divide it by 2, I'll do that with you, and divide it by 2, that's going to give us 358. So our median is 358. That's going to be approximately here. That's our middle. Now we need our Q1 and Q3. So when we have an even number of points, we can draw our line there and split it into our two sections. The middle of this section is going to be Q1. The middle of the right section is going to be Q3. So now we have 350 is our Q1 and 375 is our Q3. So I just draw that line and then I connect them, and then I connect the ends. I'm going to pause it and let you make the box and whisker for Snowboard Central and then check your work with me. Alright, here's what it should look like. Here's Snowboard Central and Middletown snowboards. So, first question, what's the median price for Middletown snowboards? Here's Middletown. The median is the middle, so that's going to be 358. I'm going to skip B since we're running out of time, so let's go to C. What is the range of prices for snowboards at Snowboard Central? So Snowboard Central is here. Range of prices means highest to lowest, and I actually forgot to write that's 402. So our range for Snowboard Central is going to be the highest, which is 402, minus the lowest, which is 343. When we subtract those, we'll get 59. So our answer to that, the range of prices, is $59. D, which price represents the 75th percentile? That means, what is Q3? So we go up, this one's for Middletown snowboards. So we go up to Middletown, we want to know the 75th percentile, which means what's Q3? And that is $375. Then let's go to F. What percent of snowboards were more than $395 at Snowboard Central? So we go to snowboard. What percent is more than $395? Well, what's the percentage that's made up of this little section? That's going to be 25%. And I'm sorry we actually ran out of time for the rest of our questions.